Hello, welcome to ATI 4640. Continuing with the top 10 decisions for operations managers, this chapter will address finding the proper location for a plant or a branch of a service or warehouse or a headquarter. The session will discuss the various strategies, methods, techniques, and approaches that can be used to identify the business site. In addition, the session will discuss the relation of the location decision with other decision areas. One of the famous case studies about location is FedEx. The Federal Express implemented the central hub concept, which was very successful. That central hub is located in Memphis, Tennessee. This concept enabled service to more locations with fewer aircrafts. It enabled matching of aircraft flights with packages or package loads. The hub reduced mishandling and delays in transit since they can control the package from pickup to delivery. But why Memphis? If you look at the United States map, you will see that Memphis almost in the middle of the United States. Not only that, but also have a very few hours or days of bad weather closure. So there are more than one factor that affected or impacted the decision of selecting that location. And we will look at these factors as we go through the session. Remember that location decision is one of the top 10 important decisions an operations manager has to deal with. With the current global nature of the market, businesses started considering locations in other countries. Some companies are moving their offices to international locations, searching for cheap labor, lower taxation, and easy to export rules. Selecting a location is a long-term decision and will be difficult to change. For that, companies must consider the impact of the selected location on companies' operations and on the long run. If the location was not the proper location, change will be difficult. When choosing a location, we have to make sure to maximize the benefit of the location to the firm. What triggers the need for a new location is usually companies are looking for a new location for either expanding existing facilities, maintaining existing and adding new ones, or closing existing and relocating to a new ones. When looking for a new location, the decision requires careful consideration, not only for related costs, but to consider the long commitment and the difficulty of reducing these associated costs. Actually, efforts spent determining optimal facility location is a good investment. The global nature of the market adds complexity to the location decision. Some of the drivers of being global in nature are the market economics with global demand and supply. The demand now is not only domestic but also on a global level. Also, the supplier are not in your area only but also on a global level. The easy communication through advanced technologies with both the customer and supplier, which made it easy to have your facility anywhere in the globe. Even if you order from other countries, it will arrive fast and through reliable transportation. In addition, transactions and cash flows are easier than before, so you can submit a payment or send an invoice and get your money as soon as you can. It's no problem with that. It's easy to transmit money. Not to forget the different rates of labor costs and the availability of the required skills. which in some countries you will find lots of people seeking for jobs and with a low cost. For each location decision, key success factors can be identified. The global nature of businesses and the markets makes location selection on three different levels. We have the country level. We can select a country that we need to be in. We can select a region or community, and we can select a site like a city or a specific place in a certain area, each of which has critical success factors for its location and for the location selection. For example, on a country level, the critical success factors will be country political system, the government, rules that applies to the industry or the service, the attitudes and incentives that will motivate the business or the organization to select that country, and political stability is very, very important. So we need to look at the political situation in that country to select that country. Not to forget that each country has their own culture and economical issues that might interfere with the type of production or service provided by the firm. When you choose a country for your business, you want to know how far your company from the market. For example, customers with high demand, and how easy to get your product or service to them. Also, the availability of workers with good attitude and high productivity with lower cost will be very important success factor to look at, such as choosing China that has labor available at low cost with the ability to work shifts and overtime to achieve high productivity. The firm needs the supplies to be available to minimize or eliminate downtime with a good communication system and a source of energy, and of course the last thing that we need to look at is having utilities available for our company to be able to perform or produce our product. And then we need to look at the exchange rate, the exchange rates for the currency of that country and the risk associated with that. If you are in their country, you have a facility in their country, so most likely they will ask you to deal with their currency. If you deal with their currency and the headquarter is in the US, then any exchange or any rate change that will affect, of course, the profit and the cost for you, since it's not in the same currency, and any changes will be a risk that will be associated with that. On a regional or community level, we look at what does the corporate desire, and we look at the attractiveness of that region. So most likely we are talking about like a state. If we are talking about a region in the United States, then maybe we are looking at one of the states to be my region or my area. We can look at the like East Coast, West Coast, Central. Also, that can be a region. We look at the labor availability, including costs and unions involvement. We look at the cost and availability of utilities, and as we said, we need the utilities and energy to conduct our job. Environmental regulations in the region. We look at the government incentives and policies on the state level. We look at proximity to raw material and consumers, and we look at the land construction cost. On a site level, the critical success factors will be site size and cost, the air, railway, highway, and waterway system, the transportation system that's available in the area. The roads, we have to make sure that we are closer to the highway. They have railroads, they have waterways, they have a nearby airports, so we can conduct. Again, it's very important to look at the transportation system for our customers and to get the stuff from our supplier. We also look at the zoning restrictions for that area, and then the nearness of services and supplies needed. And lastly, we look at the environmental impact issues in that area. Let's discuss some of the factors in details, since they are factors that affect taking a decision in the location selection. The first factor, for example, labor productivity. Notice that wages or wage rates the wages rates are not the only cost actually included in product or service cost. There are other factors that might affect the total cost. In fact, lower productivity may increase total cost. To confirm that, we can compare the cost per unit in two different cities in different countries. To calculate the cost per unit, we divide the labor cost per day on the number of units produced per day. For example, in South Carolina, the labor cost per day is $70, but they can produce up to 60 units. That's $17 per unit. While in Mexico, the labor cost per day is $25, and they produce 20 units per day. That is $25 per unit, which is more than South Carolina and is considered a high labor cost area. So again, we look at the productivity, but we look at that from how much would it cost per unit, and based on that, some areas that we can consider as low cost labor might not be efficient. One of the key factors that we mentioned on the country level was the exchange rate of currency and the risk of losing value, which might impact costs. The change in rates might affect the profit of a company due to the decrease of the value of the currency in that country. The solution will be through using operational hedging, which is shifting production as exchange rates change. So if there is a loss of currency rate in one country, we shift to the other country that has more stability. Some of the costs associated with the location might be tangible and easy to measure, such as utilities, labor, material, taxes, while some costs are intangible and hard to quantify, such as education, public transportation, community quality of life. From what we discussed, you can see that location decisions based on costs alone can create difficult ethical situations. In selecting the location, you would like to look at the attitude of the people in the country and the local government towards private and intellectual property. You need to look at the zoning for works, and you need to look at the pollution and the employment rate stability. You would like to learn more about the attitude of the workers in that area towards turnover, unions, and absence. Not to forget that cultures differ from one country to another, especially towards child labor, bribe, and other legal and ethical issues that countries don't agree on. You would like to select your location to be closer to the market, which is very important to services. Being closer to the market will assist in supplying the market with their demand just in time. As a firm, you will be considered also customer for your suppliers, um, and the suppliers for the raw material, of course, which needed for your production and services. So actually we are looking for both sides. First, us being a supplier for the customers, and second, we as a company being a customer for the supplier. So if you are using perishable items, for example, or perishable goods, you will like your supplier to be closer to you or to your facility to get those items before they expire. Uh, in another scenario, if your firm needs bulky items that cost too much in transportation, you would like to be closer to your supplier so that transportation will not cost that much. Proximity to the market or to your supplier is very important factor. Not only to the market and to the supplier, but sometimes to competitors. The location is very uh, important, or the proximity is very important. For example, you will find a group of hotels clustered in one area, such as the Orlando attraction area, which actually assist in the success of the service or production, since the clustered firms will be competing together to attract customers to their product or service. This slide and the following two slides list some of the industries that cluster together in a certain area and the reason for the clustering. For example, the wine makers in Napa Valley in the United States to be closer to the natural resources, such as the large farms of grapes and the nice climate of California. We can look at other examples like the software firms, the clean energy, and also the theme parks in Orlando, the electronics firms in northern Mexico, the computer hardware manufacturers in Singapore and Taiwan. And again, for each one of these locations, we have a reason for the clustering and the choice of that area or that location. To identify and rate the different factors that affect location selection, we use different methods of evaluating location alternatives, such as one of the examples is factor rating. Factor rating is a very popular method because it can include a variety of factors in the analysis. The factor rating method has 6 steps. First, we need to develop a list of the relevant factors called critical success factors for that location or for the company. Then we assign a weight to each factor to reflect its relative importance in the company's objectives. Then we develop a scale for each factor. We score each location for each factor. And then we multiply the score by the weights for each factor for each location. And then we recommend the location with the highest points scored. Let's check which location will be better to select for our firm based on the factor rating method. The company is looking at two countries, France and Denmark. The identified factors are we are looking at labor availability and attitude, people to car ratio, per capita income, tax structure, education, and health. The weight here reflects the relative importance for each factor based on company's objectives. As you can see, the tax structure is very important for the company with 39%. So those are the weights that's been scored based on the company's objectives. And it seems that they are looking for a country with a very good tax structure that is clear and has explicit rules, and that's why it's 39%. Also, the company is looking for 25% in the availability of labor in the chosen country. The scores from 100 for the two countries have been also listed, and those scores is based again on how much is that available in that country, the labor, how much labor is available, and what will be the attitude. And based on that, we have scores, people to car ratio, and we score per capita income and so on. So we develop, or the companies or the countries have their own scores, and it will be listed, and then we select from these scores. We multiply the score for each country with the weight, as you can see here, for both countries, and then we add all the scores together to get the total score. As you can see from the example, the total score for France was 70.35, which is higher than Denmark at 68. So we are going to select France as our location for the company. Another method of evaluating location alternative is the locational cost volume analysis used for industrial locations. This method has 3 steps. We need to determine the fixed and variable costs for each location. We need to plot the cost for each location, and then we select a location with lowest total cost for expected production volume. For example, there is a company that needs to expand their capacity. The company is considering 3 locations: Athens, Brussels, and Lisbon. They are looking for the most economical location for an expected production volume of 2,000 units per year. The fixed cost and variable cost per unit are listed in the table. To calculate the total cost, we multiply the variable cost per unit by the volume. That's the number of units per year, and then adding that to the fixed cost. The results are listed in the last column. To find the point when 2 locations are intersecting, we equate the total cost of Athens and Brussels, leaving the volume as unknown x. And this is the 2 locations, Athens and Brussels. We left x as variable, equate the total cost, and then find the value of x, which is 1,000 units here. And then we do again another crossover point between Brussels and Lisbon, and x at that point will be 2,500. So drawing the chart that represents all 3 cities, we can conclude the following. If the produced number of units is less than 1,000, we choose Athens. If the produced number of units between 1,000 to 2,500, we choose Brussels. If the production is more than 2,500 units, we choose Lisbon. Since we are at 2,000, expected 2,000 units per year, then we are going to choose Brussels as our city with the lowest cost. The third method that can be used in location selection is the center of gravity method, which finds location of distribution centers or center that minimizes distribution cost. This method actually considers location of markets, volume of goods shipped to those markets, and the shipping cost or the distance between those locations. We place existing locations on a coordinate grid where the grid origin and scale is arbitrary, maintaining relative distances. Then we calculate x and y coordinates for center of gravity, assuming cost is directly proportional to distance and volume shipped. The x coordinate will equal the sum of x coordinate values of a location multiplied by the quantity of goods moved to or from that location, and all that will be divided by the summation of all quantities. The y coordinate will equal the sum of y coordinates value of location multiplied by the quantity of goods moved to or from that location, all divided by the summation of all quantities. In this example, we are looking at the demand for Queens discount department stores. The table shows the number of quantities or containers shipped per month from the different locations. We identify x and y coordinate for each location, and knowing the quantities from the example, we can see that Chicago has x 30 and y 120, and the quantity is 2,000 units that will be sent out from that location. All stores coordinates will be used to calculate the center of gravity. So we have the XY for New York, we have the XY for Pittsburgh, and we have the XY for Atlanta. Going back to the formula and multiplying the coordinates with the number of units that's been shipped. So we multiply the X for each coordinate for each city, multiplied by the number of units that will be shipped from that city, and then we divide by the total number of units that will be shipped from all cities, and that will be 6.7 for the X coordinate. We do the same for the Y coordinate, and we will get 93.3 for the Y coordinate value. Going back to the chart, we can identify the calculated coordinate on the chart, and that will be in that will be the center of gravity for those locations. So the new location for our facility will be in this area or in this location. That will be southeast of Chicago, northeast of Atlanta, and southwest of Pittsburgh. The last method will be the transportation model, where the method finds amounts to be shipped from several points of supply to several points of demand. The solution will be to minimize total production and shipping costs. This model is considered as a special class of linear programming problems in operation research, and we are not going to go through that transportation model. It's very complicated, very complex, and usually it's used for large amounts of shipments and decision on the transportation and moving stuff from the supply or suppliers to the demand or demand locations. For example, the worldwide distribution of Volkswagens and parts, we can see the complexity of this model and how it will be hard to decide. That's why we use linear programming, and we can find the most cost-effective locations as identified on the map. So we have those locations being identified based on the different models that the linear programming models that we developed, or that the researchers developed to find these locations. And again, this is very complex, and we are not going to go through that. Some of the factors addressed before might affect the service industry as it affects the manufacturing. But there are other major determinants that can be used to assist in selecting the location of a service. Those determinants are selecting the location in the area with the most purchasing power, since it's a service and I need interaction with the customer. So I'm looking for the most populated area and the most purchasing power. A location that's compatible with demographics of the customer drawing area. I'm serving what they need. So for example, if I'm serving something or I'm selling something as a retail store for the beach, then I would be in a beach area where I'm providing the clothing for the beach, the equipment for the beach, and anything that's related to the beach. So I have to be in that demographic area, be compatible with that demographic area and the purchasing power of that area. Selecting the location with competition in the area, such as hotel clustering or restaurant clustering, or selecting location with low competition in that area, such as a retail store where no one in the area, so I'm serving that area. I will open my store to serve that area. So either you be with competitors or in an area where there is no competition and that area needs somebody to serve the population. Part of the judgment will be looking at the quality of the competition. In addition, we need to consider the uniqueness of the selected location compared to the competitor's location. We need to consider the physical qualities of the facilities and neighboring businesses. We need to consider the operating policies of the firm, and we need to consider the quality of management. This slide and the next slide will compare locations, strategies of goods and services. The service will be revenue focused, while the goods will be cost focused. The goods will have tangible and intangible costs, as we stated before in previous slide, while for the service we are looking at volume and physical quality. Usually, cost of the service will be determined by the rent, management, caliber, and the wages. But again, those things that we went through, actually, we did talk about that. We did talk about the differences between the services and the goods in the previous slides. For example, some of the techniques that can be used in both goods and services to select the location, the assumptions of the product that I will be dealing with or the services that I will be providing. Location is strategically important decision in the hospitality industry. La Quinta, for example, started with 35 independent variables and worked to refine regression model to predict profitability, and the final model had only 4 variables. So although we have 10 determinants, if you want to be within the right, let's say, decision, then you can use all 10 determinants. But again, some hotels will do their own analysis and then will come up with 4 or 5 factors that will affect them. For example, here the price of the inn, the median income levels, state population per inn, and location of nearby colleges. Those are the factors that this hotel saw more important. And then 51% of the profitability actually was predicted by just using those 4 factors. One of the new tools to help in location analysis is the Geographic Information Systems, or what we know as GIS, which enables more complex demographic analysis. The available bases include detailed census data, detailed maps, utilities, geographic features, and locations of major services. This is a screenshot of the GIS system that's used to identify target markets by income, ethnicity, product use, age, etc. The data from map info helps the competitive helps with analyzing the competitive uh, uh, market in the area. The blue rings represents various miles radii that were drawn around the competitor. The red lines indicates the drive time to the firm on central store. The location is a very important decision to consider when opening a firm, a branch, a manufacturing facility, or other facilities. So using the methods that we learned, in addition to the different software tools like GIS, this one that we have here, will assist in taking such a long-term decision. It's a commitment for that location. So you need to make sure that you are selecting the proper location. As an operations manager, your role will be to stay current with all new technologies or any methods that's in the market or any technique to select the proper location and take the proper decision. That will be all for this session. If you have any questions or concerns, please let me know. Thank you and have a great day.